Welcome to the Winning Edge Investments Podcast. Winning Edge Investments provides industry-leading horse racing and sports betting tips, ratings and education, enabling you to invest intelligently and treat your betting like a business. Go to www.winningedgeinvestments.com to learn more about how you can start to supercharge your betting bank immediately. Treat your betting like a business and invest intelligently with Winning Edge Investments.
G'day punters and welcome to the Winning Edge Investments Melbourne Cup preview. I'm your host Lewis, and joining me to preview the 2022 Melbourne Cup are two of the industry's sharpest minds. Dean Evans, who runs the very successful Trial Spy and Dean's Tip services at Winning Edge. Winning Edge Investments is Australia's most trusted and profitable horse racing and sports betting tips provider, offering industry-leading betting tips, advice and education, enabling you to invest intelligently and generate long-term profits by treating your betting as a business. How are you, Dean?
I'm very well, Lewis. How are you going?
Yeah, going well, thanks. And Luke Murrell, Director of Australian Bloodstock. How are you, Luke?
Yeah, afternoon, guys. Good, thanks.
Luke, maybe just before we get going, do you want to maybe say a quick word about Australian Bloodstock for those listening that don't already know what you guys do?
Yeah, look, my background, I was at one stage going to be a bookmaker, and we decided to use the form angle and just buy tried horses initially, and we had a lot of luck and parlayed it up, and I suppose we've got about 200 in work at any one time, and had plenty of luck, and just using a different angle rather than the eye, you use a bit of data and analysis, and it's built to where it is today.
Yep. And you buy a lot of horses overseas?
Yeah, look, probably it's a market that still hasn't. Europe's a weird place. They don't understand sectional times. They don't understand the breakdowns and race shapes and things like that just yet. It's still very much a case of time form is the king over there, and it gives you a little edge. So we've done quite well out of there and Japan and whatnot. So it's a good place.
Yeah, brilliant. Let's touch on the track ahead of Tuesday. A soft 7 with some rain forecast on the day. Are you working off a soft track, Luke?
Yeah, I am. Flemington and probably Newcastle are the two best drying tracks in Australia, and we saw a couple of years ago they copped 130 mils in about 2 hours, and yet they still ran really good time, and firm track horses were still able to win on the day. So I think it'd have to be pretty severe or right on race time to sort of change your tact, and I think the soft is the way to play this one.
Yep. And what about you, Dean?
Yeah, I'm pretty similar. Flemington is just an exceptional track. Found in the last few years that wet track horses can win even if the track's good. It's always got a bit of give in it, but conversely, horses that usually don't handle a very heavy track seem to have no issue handling a wet Flemington, because it just doesn't get that deep sort of heavy bog that you get at places like Randwick and other tracks. So generally tends to play pretty fair, and most horses generally tend to handle the track, and the track's not really the excuse for them. So I'm operating a sort of a soft 7 with most horses getting their chance.
Yep. So we're going to go through each runner by runner and get a comment from the boys. A little bit of a strategy. So start with horse number 1, Mare and Mark Zara. He was second in the Caulfield Cup, and then pretty unlucky not to finish a lot closer in the Cox Plate, I thought. Luke, you of course won the Melbourne Cup in 2014 with Protectionist. You win another one with Gold Trip.
Well, certainly hoping so. You look through the race, and there's probably 3 or 4 genuine weight for age horses. So he's one of them. The negative, I suppose, he's won one race, and he has to give sort of multiple Group 1 winners weight. So Dean would know a lot more than me, but history would say it's probably against him. But the last couple of years, they've sort of started to weight the race, not like a true handicap, and more like a set weights and penalties race. So that has him there somewhere abouts. But the one win is his main issue. He'll handle whether it's rock hard or a heavy 100. So that won't be the thing that beats him, that's for sure.
And Dean?
Yeah, look, he's certainly one of the clear class horses of the race. His form in France and Europe was pretty exceptional. Group 1, genuine Group 1 form over there, and then he's come here, and once he started to get to his right distance range in the wet track, he ran really well in the Caulfield Cup, obviously, and had no luck in the Cox Plate. He does have a big weight, but there's a lot of talk about the weights last year, and very elegant as a mare, still managed to win with 57, and Incentivized and Spanish Mission was second and third, so it was sort of the class horses that came to the fore there. I've got Gold Trip rated third. I think there's a couple that are weighted quite well in the race, but apart from them, he's certainly the class horse, and he's definitely, the current market. I certainly think he's a great place bet. I've seen as much as $4.80 a place about him, and I think he's a very good chance to at least run a hole.
Horse number 2 is DUAIS. She had a terrific autumn, winning the Cup and the Tancred. Hugh Bowman looking to win his first Melbourne Cup aboard her. How do you rate it?
Yeah, just got a question mark of how well she's going. I think she's a horse that's definitely better on top of the ground. She was sort of pulled up lame after the George Main, which is always an issue. Then, she didn't really do anything in the Turnbull. And then, people are sort of talking about her Caulfield Cup run. But, she was sort of out the back, did nothing. And then, she ran home well. But, her sectionals over the last 1,000 metres were similar to Sound, who's a 10-year-old. And so I'm just not as enamoured by that sort of run as some of the others are. I think she'll run the trip and she'll enjoy it. And if it was a dry track, maybe you'd give her a little bit more of a hope. But on a wet track and just the way she's going, I can't have her personally.
What about you, Luke?
Yeah, she's gone from having roller skates and flying in the autumn, and she's got square wheels now. She just can't go. I'm a really big one for horses. When you look through history, they've all had 10,000 metres, most of the winners and the place getters especially, and she doesn't tick that box. She, on her old form, she's one of the rare weight for age horses in the race, but you just can't have her. She doesn't have the distance, and I'm happy to lose if she wins.
Horse number 3, Order, the Waterhouse spot, and Tim Clark. He won the New Cup on a bog track in the autumn. Any chance, Luke?
Not for me. I like the gate for him. He gets to roll across, but I've actually mapped the race with plenty of speed, and there'll be a lot of horses here with no weight, and that mentality, I've got to push on, I've got no weight type scenario. So he's sort of one of them to help speed that race along, and I just don't think he's got the quality for me.
Dave?
Yeah, I think he's an interesting horse. He definitely gets better as he gets over ground. He sort of, the 2 times where he's excelled in his preps, he sort of won the Brisbane Cup last year, and then the Sydney Cup earlier this year. But I think the really bog sort of heavy suits him, and I just don't think Flemington suits him that well. He's had 5 starts at Flemington. He's been unplaced every time. They walked in front in the Turnbull, and he sort of couldn't run a place. And if it did end up being an absolute torrential bog heavy, where it rains, a couple of hours just before, and it sort of brings him in a little bit. But I don't like his Flemington record, and he's pretty well weighted up in the weights for the horse that he is. So I'm looking to others.
Horse number 4 is MONTEFILIA, trained by David Payne and to be ridden by Jason Collette. Draws nicely in barrier 11. Did you run out the 2 miles, Dean?
Yeah, I think that's a big question. David Payne, he's a very good trainer of stayers. He's had a lot of success with them, particularly in South Africa. But I've always had a question with this horse, even over 2,400. Early on, she ran 3rd in the VRC Oaks, 5th in the Australian Oaks, distant 4th in the Caulfield Cup. She has won a Metrop, where she sort of, just got home over in a sort of average field. And again, she sort of ran well in the Caulfield Cup, but I'm just not so sure about the sort of form of that. And her sectionals were pretty good. It was sort of the strongest finish of the race. But I think she's a real superstar sort of 2,000 metre horse who can run 2,400 well at Group 1 level, but I just got reservations with her over 2 miles, and again she's well up in the weights, so she's a classy mare, top quality mare, but I just don't think she's a winning hope over 2 miles.
What are your thoughts on her, Luke?
Yeah, she's really scary for me. She doesn't tick that 10,000 metre box, which normally I'd be more than happy to pen. But as Dean said, I think David's up to about 110 Group 1 winners, and there's not many trainers in the world that can say that, So he's very, very canny, and I'm sure I remember talking to him about this time last year, and he had this race planned 12 months ago. So I think everything's been aimed at it. I just don't like the platform, given if I'm right and we've got a fast run race and she's only had that limited amount of racing this prep, that just scares me to really run it out. And it scares me to say she's not a winning chance, but it won't surprise me if she charges late and does something for the minor money.
Horse number 5 is NUMERIAN, Annabelle Neesham, and Tommy Berry. He was 5th in the Caulfield Cup last start. What did you make of his Luke?
Yeah, he was a horse that we tried to buy overseas, actually. He's had really good form. He's only by Dirty Rotten Holy Emperor, and they generally don't get these out-and-out stayers. They're more mile or 2,000 horses. And I suppose you could argue his profile's a little bit like that, but the thing I like about this particular bloke is he's had a lot of runs. When we count Queensland, he would have had no time off with that, and so he's going into it a lot fitter than most of his opposition. And in previous years, that's held you instead very good for this race. So again, I don't seem classy enough to win, but he'll be going in my sort of thirds and fourths for those first fours.
And Dean, I know you were keen on his chances before he's scratching the Turnbull. Do you give hope on Tuesday?
I'm certainly a big fan of the horse. I can see why Luke tried to buy him. This is a horse that beat Sir Dragonet by 3 lengths, who came out and won a Cox Plate, and got beaten nose by Armory, who ran second in that same Cox Plate. So his European form's stellar. He also really likes wet tracks. He did it on really bulk heavy tracks over there. So there's Irish tracks as well that get really deep. So he's going to enjoy the wet. I just think he's a really top quality 2,000, 2,200 metre horse. The Caulfield Cup 24, I thought Tommy could have been a bit more patient, and I think he could win a Caulfield Cup, but I just don't think he's going to run the 2 miles, unfortunately. But he has the miles on the legs and he has the class, so I think he's going to surprise people. For a 70-1 horse, I think he's going to be right there. But I just can't see him winning over 2 miles.
Dix Without a Fight is first of the internationals. How do you rate his chances, Luke?
Yeah, this guy, he's a real tough sort of who shot the barman type of. He will run the trip. He just, from a ratings point of view, if we line up all the Europeans, he's just a little bit off what the 3-year-olds are going to bring. He's probably a safer bet because he's an older horse, and as you know, like 3-year-olds travel on the other side of the country. It's very, very hard for them to do that. So, the other side of the world. So, again, not one I would be very surprised if he won because he doesn't really have a lot of quality. But the fact that he can stick on, he's got plenty of miles in his legs, and he's actually trained by a very good trainer over there. So, all that will help him greatly.
Dean?
Look, I'm really keen on this horse. I don't follow the international racing anywhere near as closely as Luke does. But from sort of the profiling I've done of how overseas horses run well here, I've got him clearly on top. He won twice at York in June and July over 2,800 metres, listed in Group 3 level by sort of 2 lengths and 3.5 lengths. He was dominant sort of on pace. He was very strong on the line. He was ridden quieter over 2,400 at Newmarket and listed grade on 23rd of September and finished well for second. I think that's really important because a lot of these imports that have failed in the past are the ones that sort of they have a run in June or July and then they don't have another run. I think you've generally got to have a run preferably in September or late August at the worst. So I just like that profile. Like Luke said, he's got a good trainer. He's owned by Sheikh El Maktoum, who's, you know, he knows what he's doing and bring horses over here. One form line that I thought, you know, did stand up is he ran second beaten ahead over 2,400 metres in Dubai to Hukum, and it won a Group 1 Coronation Cup. It beat a horse called Pile Driver by 5 lengths, and then it won the Group 1 King George and Queen Elizabeth Stakes. So that's pretty good form over there. So just sort of in lining them up, you know, the way he's weighted compared to, say, the 3-year-old Deauville Legend, you know, for me, that's the big difference. You know, Deauville Legend's a really, really good horse, but I just think he's better weighted without a fight, and he just sort of profiles as the type of horse that's going to come here and I think run really well.
Horse number 7 is CAMORRA. He won the Group 2 Curragh Cup in Ireland 2 starts ago, and he is now with Ben and JD Hayes. Dan, your thoughts on him?
Yeah, look, that Group 2 one at the Curragh, that's a type of race that you know, horses have then come and run really well in the Melbourne Cup here. One thing that seems to stand out in his form a bit is he seems to prefer a dry track. He's sort of flopped a few times on wet. He also really mixes his form a lot, and he sort of had a really poor run last start. So Luke will know a lot more about him as a horse than I do. But no, I just sort of look at the profile, and coming off such a bad run last start, I sort of will probably be betting around him.
Luke?
Yeah, I rate every race over there in Europe, and of the internationals this year, he rates between about 5 and 8 lengths behind everything else of international standard. So I think he'll struggle to run top 10 myself, but he's not for me. He just hasn't done anything. The race where he ran, the sectionals were very, very common. The overall time was terrible. Yeah, honestly, he looks a midweeker.
Horse number 8, Deauville Legend, current race favourite, James and Karen McAvoy, looking to win his 4th Melbourne Cup, drawn perfectly in barrier 9 here. How did you rate his chances, Luke?
Yeah, interesting horse in that he's so short. I don't know. Look, obviously, the media loves to jump onto one in terms of international each year, but they've got to be drunk. Like, this horse is a $15, $18 chance. He's a nice horse. He's progressive, but he rates about 3 lengths behind Huya Mal. He beat Huya Mal at Goodwood one day. He started $14 and Huya Mal was $6. And it's worth noting in that race, Huya Mal had been sold in between. He actually went through a sales ring. Gay and the team bought him. And he only had 60 days off. So generally when they go to a sale, obviously they're standing around in their box for a week prior. Post-sale, they're standing around in their box. So he would have been clearly underdone. In that particular race, you really wanted to be coming down the crown of the track that day. They settled next to each other, worse than midfield, and the other horse just got the dream card into the race where they cut back to the inside on the other bloke, and he only just got him on the line, and now you want to take $3.80 about him. I think he's the lay of the day easily, and you make a lot of money on him. I'm not saying he can't win, but there's nowhere near he should be that price.
Would you look to lay him the place as well?
I would, yeah. I will be, actually, yeah.
Yep. Dane?
Yeah, the price really astounds me. I just don't know how he's suddenly, you know, $3.80, $3.60. He, you know, was a really impressive winner of the Group 2 Great Baldiger Stakes at York last start. That's the race Cross Counter won. Cross Counter ran second before winning the Melbourne Cup. The issue for me is just simply the weights as a Northern Hemisphere 3-year-old. You know, everyone's sort of talking about the Northern Hemisphere 3-year-olds, and, you know, Rekindling one with 51.5, Cross Counter one was 51. And what I find kind of surprising is, you know, on the back of that, I was really keen to back Il Paradiso in 2019 with, you know, 52.5, and it should have won the race. But, you know, it was $15, $17, and it should have won. Then the next year, no, Tiger Moth rode 52.5, got beat half a length, and it was sort of $8. I was keen on it again. And now suddenly, you know, we've got one here carrying 55 kgs, and we're supposed to take 380. Like, it just doesn't stack up. It might be fair to say that this one's better than those, and also that this Melbourne Cup might be weaker. But I can't put all that together. It just can't be a bet at that price. So yeah, I have to look elsewhere from a betting perspective. But he's clearly a strong top 3 chance.
Number 9 is Stockman, Joseph Pride and Sam Clipperton. He ran around on Saturday in the Rosehill Cup, finished sort of midfield there. How do you rate his chances down?
Look, he's really a wet tracker, and so he's going to get those sorts of conditions to suit. He did sort of run second to Jouet in the Tancred, fourth in the Metrop. He's a solid sort of type. You could pen him initially on his Sydney Cup run, but I think that day that he ran the Sydney Cup on a really bog heavy, you had to be leading or on pace all day, and he settled dead last, or sort of 15th, and sort of made a fair bit of ground late. I think he's the kind of horse who's going to get the trip, going to get some conditions to suit. Has a better rider now than he had in the Sydney Cup, and he could fill into a top 10 position, but he's not a horse I'm going to be backing.
Luke, did you any?
Yeah, no, I don't like him. It's pretty much what Dean said. He got his preferred ground in the Sydney Cup and did not much. For mine, when I look at all these sectionals, he doesn't run too much past about 2,600, and there'll just be other horses better set up. And I like the quick back up, but I hate the interstate travel within 3 days, then trying to back up as well. So I think there's a few things against there.
Yep. Horse number 10, Bow and Claire, the winner of the race in 2019, looks to be finding some sort of his old form. Luke, do you give him a chance?
I don't. The year he won, obviously he just got an amazing ride from Craig Williams, and since then we probably haven't really seen him in the winner's circle doing too much. He doesn't have the miles in his legs for me, and he has surprised me in his first couple of runs this prep, but I just don't think he had his birthday and Christmas all at once, the other Melbourne Cup, and he won't get that here.
Dean?
Yeah, he's an interesting one. He's been out of form for so long. He pretty much won the Melbourne Cup, ran third in the Turnbull, and then did nothing after that. But all of a sudden, interestingly, on his ratings, his last 2 runs have actually, rated above what he was doing before, and even with his Melbourne Cup win. They're 2 of his best rating runs, apart from his Turnbull third 2 years ago. So that's interesting. He had 58 kgs in the Bart Cummings, and he didn't have a lot of luck, and he finished well, and then he was caught wide, and the Caulfield Cup didn't really have any luck. Look, I agree with Luke in the sense that I don't think he's a winning chance, but I think he might surprise people and be one of those horses that can run a cheeky sort of 4th, 5th, 6th and actually outperform, just because I think he's got the miles in his legs. He can run the trip, and he is starting to get back to his best.
Horse number 11 is young Werther. Won just the one race from 14 starts. He was third in the Turnbull 2 starts ago, and then raced in the Cox Plate last start. Any chance here, Dean?
I just find it difficult. He had 330 days off, and he's had a 1,700 metre run, a 2,000 metre run, and a 2,000 metre run on the Cox Plate. So he hasn't had the miles in his legs. He seems to excel when he gets to 2,400, but he doesn't also seem like the type who's screaming out for 2 miles. Danny O'Brien can train. He's got a good rider. But he's just not a horse that I can back to win this race.
Luke?
Dean was far more kinder than I would be. None.
There we go. 12, Huya Mel for Gay Waterhouse, Adrian White, and Craig Williams, who's riding very well at the minute. Any chance here, Luke?
Yeah, look, he's I don't know. I like Dean's point where he mentioned before these international horses having that run as close to quarantine as possible, and that's probably my only negative on this horse. I would have loved another run in between, but well, this is he ran second in the Epsom Derby at $1,000,000 to 1, but as I said, he ran into that good horse that everyone's telling us is the next far lap in DUAVILLE Legend, and he got beat the last stride, didn't have the right run, didn't have the right platform or setup where the other horse did. And what was interesting, in the run on, he was back in front of that horse. So, and when you look at the ride, actually, it was a case for the rider didn't really ride him out. So I've got him clearly on top of the internationals. He's only a little horse, so the weight certainly helps in that regard. And yeah, I think he's your best each way in the race. So he's a winning chance for me.
And you, Dean?
Yeah, he's probably the biggest head scratcher for me. It's interesting hearing Luke so positive about him. I just keep hearing mixed things about others who are just potting him and saying he's no good. I worry a little bit that Gay, she's usually really super confident about things, and she's talking about how he might be a bit immature and he might be better next year. She had a similar horse, Sir Lucan, that ran last year and sort of came here and maybe had a similar profile and it was a bit immature and sort of ran down the track, and I just I don't know, I just wonder whether he's a next year horse, whether it's all a bit too soon, but respect Luke's opinion on the horse.
The only thing there on the Sir Lucan situation, they got him off Aidan O'Brien and fair income. He could sell you Winks and offer it to you at $1 and I wouldn't buy it. He's a freakish trainer. They leave the yard, and no matter who they go to, they don't. It's so rare to see them actually do anything. They don't lose a length or two. They lose a lung and 2 legs. Like, they're just cast when they leave that joint. So
yeah,
where I suspect they were quite clever in the Group 1. It was his last run. You'll see he finishes down the track. I suspect that was a barrier trial. And even though he only won a 4-horse race, that was one of the best 3-year-old ratings all season for the whole 3-year-old crop. So, look, I know he looks a bit in and out on paper, and he's not my type physically. He looks a little ant, to be honest, but his form's okay. So he'll get his chance here.
13 is Serpentine, backs up after finishing second in the Archer Stakes at Flemington on the weekend. Has this got any chance, Dean?
You wouldn't think so. I mean, he's been going awful for a long time. He managed to pop up in the Archer, but I just got question marks about that field. I mean, most of them were just completely gone. Crystal Pegasus, who sort of doesn't handle the wet, somehow managed to finish close up, and Surefire, who they didn't want to accept with. So I just can't have him, even though sometimes Nick Williams can surprise. I don't think he's going to do it with this one.
Luke?
Yep. Serpentine. That race seems to take too much out of every horse every time they sort of try and back up. It's been a while since something's really done anything. I thought possibly they should have went harder on Saturday. To me, they looked a bit like rocking horses going up and down the one spot. I didn't like the look of that form, and really he's done nothing since his glory days in Epsom a long time ago. So he's another pace influence, which I'm happy to see in the race, but I couldn't give him any hope, really.
14 is DAQIANSWEET Jr. Philip Stokes and Daniel Moore. He won the Adelaide Cup. Any hope here, Luke?
None at all. He's a nice listed Group 3 horse, I suppose. He did well to win an Adelaide Cup, but people are going to support him because he liked he's won at the distance.
Dean?
No, just doesn't have the class for this.
15 Grand Promenade for Mare and Eustace. Harry Coffey takes the ride from Barrier 1. He was 4th in the Melbourne Cup. Any hope here, Dean?
He sort of ran 6th in the race last year, but he had much better form going into it. I think if it was dry, being a Karen Maher horse, I think if it was dry, he could have sort of run a 4th or a 5th, but on the wet, I'm just going to leave him out. Luke?
Yeah, I think if it wasn't such a weak race this year, they probably wouldn't have even accepted. He just got square wheels this year compared to last, and yeah, he's just badly out of form.
Number 16 is Arapaho, Bjorn Baker and Rachel King. It was second in the St Ledger at Randwick last start. Your thoughts on him, Luke?
Yeah, I hate the horse, but out of every horse in the field, he's got the most metres in his legs this prep, which probably not unusual for one of Bjorn's. So he's got 25,000 metres into his legs, and, you know, he's going to be racing some horses like MONTEFILIA, who's got 6,000, you know, so that fitness counts for a hell of a lot. He's just a tough horse. I don't like him at all, but I'll have to include him for third and fourth. He couldn't win if he started now, but for third and fourth, definitely as a real knockout sort of horse there. It's been proven to be a really good formula to follow. So, yeah, maybe he's got one more in him.
Dave?
The thing that amazes me about this horse is how he got into the field so easily. I don't get it. He was like he was never in doubt of making the field. He won a Grafton Cup, and he got in ahead of all these other horses that were struggling to get in. I do not understand how he got such a big weight.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Anyway, I'm similar to Luke. I just don't like the horse, and I just don't think he's going to run 2 miles either.
Number 17 is Emissary for Michael Moroney and Patrick Maloney. He was an amazing win in the Geelong Cup last start. Your thoughts on him, Dean?
He's been really impressive this prep. You know, it was really good when the Heatherly. He finished home really strongly in the 2,000 metre race at Caulfield. He was in flat in the Herbert Power, and then, you know, if you just take his Geelong Cup win on face value, you know, those sectionals he ran, the last 800, the last 600 were really, really good. If it was dry, I couldn't sort of not have him, you know, in the mix. I think that's just the unfortunate thing for Connections is it's going to be wet, and I just think he needs a dry track, which is a shame for them.
Shin off for Patrick Maloney's got to be a negative as well. What are your thoughts on him, Luke?
I agree with the jockey change. I agree with Dean. Like, all the ratings nerds are going to have him right through the roof after Geelong, and the most impressive thing for me there was just his last 200. I'm going off memory here, but I'm sure he ran 11:59 or something, and they didn't loaf it in that race. So distance-wise, you can just give him a huge tick. The one thing that stops me putting him on top is he doesn't have the miles in his legs, and that really scares me. Against that, if I'm right, it's a fast-run race. That's not ideal, but at least he's drawn in where he should be able to suck up and get a few soft sections as such, and he's a scary horse for me because that last run says, here, I'm in form, I'm going to run the trip easily, and he's got a bit of quality. So definitely an each way sort of play. I'd probably, in those wider ones that could throw him in for first in or first four, I'm more thinking second to fourth for that first four players.
Horse number 18 is Lunar Flare, Graham Begg and Michael D, who's riding in terrific form. She's fine this prep. She won the Bart Cummings and was a really good run in the Moonee Valley Cup last start. Your thoughts on her, Luke?
Yeah, I just think she sort of had to peak to get into the race at the wrong time. She's going okay. I just don't think she's got the quality of some of these horses. And, you know, if this was another race, I'd be happy for Graham to win it because he seems such a lovely bloke, but I don't really have the horse as a chance myself.
Dean?
I quite like her, and I sort of never really have, but she's just running so well, you know. She won the Mornington Classic and Moonee Valley Cup last prep. Was a bit unlucky in the Zipping Classic too, and wasn't sort of beaten far with there. And she's sort of come out this prep, you know, like Luke said, he set her to win the Bart Cummings, and she did that. And she was strong on the line, and then, you know, Moonee Valley Cup, they just set her out the back, rode her really nice and quiet, and, you know, she again sort of ran home really nicely. You know, she's by Fiorente, so he's won a Melbourne Cup, and she just seems like she's just going to keep going and going. You know, of all the Aussie horses, and she's down there with 51.5 kgs. Michael D's flying. He's won a Derby. He's won a Caulfield Cup. He's riding in good form. You know, I just have these negatives on so many of the Aussie horses, and the form lines that sort of just the way they tie up, and they're all high up in the weights, and I just see her down there at the bottom, getting back and running home strong, and I like her. I quite like her in this race. I've sort of got a second pick, and probably one of only two horses I actually want to back to win.
Good little push there. Horse number 19 is SMOKIN Roman. Kieran Mare and David Eustace for Jamie Carr. Won the Naturalism and the Typical, and then started favourite in the Caulfield Cup. Dean, your thoughts on her? On him, sorry.
Yeah, he's not one of mine. He's sort of, he's going around in Bendigo Cups and Pakenham Cups last prep, and then, I just think he had his birthday sort of twice in a row, winning the Group 3 at Caulfield, and then the Group 1 at Flemington, the Turnbull, and both times they just absolutely walked in front, and he was sort of just there, and that Turnbull form was just sort of weak. The only horse that ran well in that race I think was Gold Trip, because it had no luck. The rest of them were just pretty plain. And I potted him in the Caulfield Cup, and he was just sort of there, and I just can't have him. I can't back him. I can't get into him. I'm just going to leave him alone.
Luke?
Slightly different, I suppose. Because of his racing pattern, he puts himself into the race. He's always going to probably win a few races that he shouldn't. And as Dean said, he got 2 birthdays. He beat Gold Trip, who was favoured that day by the market. But, the horse was only second up after 12 months. But he did a good job. He beat him fair and square there. And then in the Turnbull, again, it was just a jog trot, and it's not his fault that they went slow. He sort of started in the market in both traditionally 2 decent lead-up races. The Caulfield Cup run was okay. I thought it was an average ride. Personally, I can never catch Jamie Carr. Every time I back her, she's 5 wide and painting the outside fence or getting held up. But that's my little worry with him. But to me, I think he's the obvious of the Aussie horses. He's done nothing wrong. I don't want to own him saying I want him to win. Again, he could be a minor money chance, but he just might be the obvious that everyone overlooks, and you look back after the race and say, well, all his form was consistent and solid. I agree with Dean. He's come sort of out of nowhere from a listed grade horse, and all of a sudden he's a Group 1 winner, which seems a bit bizarre. But maybe he's that fit, happy horse, and he's in the right camp. That's for sure.
Horse number 20 is TRALEE Rose. He's got to hit the line okay in the Caulfield Cup, but what do you think of her chances here, Luke?
No miles in the legs, and she should have been at stud 2 years ago. I don't know how they're still pushing on with her, to be honest, but she obviously had a long time off, and she's come back, and to me, she hasn't done a thing. So she's one for the sweet players, and maybe you run last with her and get a collect, but that's it.
Dan?
Yeah, I thought they had their fun, last year running in the Melbourne Cup, and she got injured. And she had a long break, and she's come back and she's done nothing. And I'm surprised they accepted with her, but I guess, go around and have fun in the Melbourne Cup again. But she won't be doing anything.
Agreed. 21 Point NEPEAN. Lloyd Williams owned. He ran 14th in the Caulfield Cup last start. Your thoughts on him, Dean?
Well, he's just had 2 really bad runs this prep, so it just makes it very difficult to come into him. Interesting they brought Wayne Lorden over to ride him. He looked promising. He beat sort of a weak Andrew Ramsdenfield to make the Cup, but I just can't have him.
Luke?
Not enough miles and just not good enough. I'm surprised they brought the jockey over, to be honest.
Horse number 22, High Emotion, another one, and Eustace. Theo Nugent rides. She won the Bendigo Cup last Wednesday. Did you give her any chance, Luke?
Yeah, I thought the Bendigo Cup was a benchmark 80 race, and good on her for winning, and she won a big check. And again, I think it's one of those years because it's so weak, they've thought, well, we may as well have a go. And what a lot of people forget, it's 125 grand or something if you run 12th in the race. So there's a lot of owners looking to sort of, okay, we can beat half the field, and I think they'd be thinking that with her. But as far as being in the pointy end of the money, I don't give her any chance, really.
And what about you, Dean?
Yeah, it just seems like a good sort of listed Group 3 2,400 metre horse. When she has pushed to 26, 28, she's failed. I just don't think she's going to run on the trip. And like Luke said, she was probably in there to get some of that 10th to 12th money.
Horse number 23 is Interpretation. The blinkers go back on that stable again. Mare and Eustace. Froggy Newitt takes the ride. Dean, do you give him any chance?
He's sort of the most interesting runner, I think, in the race. He had some form. Luke will be able to talk more, but I thought some of the form that he had sort of, ran fourth in a St. Ledger, ran fourth in the Prix-Chardonnay. They're pretty big races over there. And they usually time well. And then he sort of came here. He's had some big reps. Karen Ma, that stable just keeps talk about how good he is and how poorly he's been ridden. I get the impression they think he should be, right up on the speed. And to be fair, he ran third in the Bart Cummings in what wasn't probably the right ride for him, and then pulled up lame in the Geelong Cup. So I'm just not sure that we've seen the best of him yet. And for me, he's sort of $61, $14 a place. I think he is a place chance, and he's the kind of horse I think I'll be throwing in my trifectas, and those sorts of things to place for sure.
Luke?
Yeah, the stable have really mucked this horse up. He's a horse that needs to be ridden ugly, up tempo on speed. Now, I see the blinkers go back on for the race, and I think that's a key pointer here. I don't love how he pulled up maybe no good out of Geelong, but I agree with Dean. If they ride him like his tail's on fire and really aggressive, put him into the race and make him be there, he's a typical one-pace Galileo horse. They've tried to ride him cute so far in Australia, but still hasn't sunk in that he just can't be ridden that way. Given that we've got a fast speed, I think with the blinkers on, he gets sucked along. And I agree with Dina. The price seems wrong for the horse, and he's definitely a minor money chance that could knock everyone out in a trifecta first four. So not saying he's a winning chance, but certainly in that minor money end.
And the final horse in this year's field is Realm of Flowers with the Freedmans and Damien Thornton. She was a good run last start in the Metrop, been pretty well backed in the betting. Your thoughts on her, Luke?
Yeah, I hate the fact that she's had almost 12 months off. She seems to run better in Sydney for mine, and she just doesn't have the miles in the leg, so I'm really surprised she's $11. In a tough, brutal race. I know she's got no weight, but I don't think that's a great setup for her. A Sydney Cup, yes, but not a Melbourne Cup. Not for me.
Dean?
Everyone keeps tipping me this horse. And it's interesting. I think people like these horses that haven't had many runs. I think Luke and I are quite similar, that we like the horses that have had the miles in the legs. Like the what was that, Surprise Baby and these sorts of things that people just love to back these horses that don't have the miles and legs, and I think they're just going to come out of nowhere and win it. I've always loved Realm of Flowers as a horse. I've always really liked her and backed her, but she ran second in a Sandown Cup to Cariff, and Cariff couldn't get sighted in a Melbourne Cup. Then she was all ready to go in the Sydney Cup last year, and she was fifth, beaten 3.4 lengths. So she seems to really excel at 2,500 meters and looks really good, and always looks good in her prep. And her Metropolitan run was huge, so I can see why people liked her. She was wide, no cover, and nearly won. And then some of those Metrop form lines have obviously tied up all right with Durst and that sort of thing. But I just I don't like when she's had 300 days off and then she's had 3 runs as prep, and I just don't know why she's $10. If she was $30, I'd be saying, well, you got to throw her in. That's great odds, and she can run a big race. But $10 is just poison. I'm going to bet around her.
All right, maybe a few final thoughts on and how you do the race from a betting point of view? Maybe we'll start with you, Luke.
Yeah, I agree with Dean. Like you've got the favourite there at $3.80 that's missing a digit, and then you've got sort of Realm of Flowers taking up such a big market. So if we're right and both of them don't feature, they're going to hold portions of a lot of money in different markets. And for me, the best way to play it, especially for the smaller punter, your $20, $50, $100, $200 punter, just try and jag the trifecta or the first four, because you're always going to get a decent collect, and you can win some decent money that maybe helps your life along rather than, I think if you're just trying to back a $4 winner or something, get Dean's stuff and, he'll find you a lot better $4 winner than the favourite in this year's Melbourne Cup, that's for sure. So I'm a big advocate for it with these massive pools and the dumb money in the pools, trying to get those trifectas and first fours. And if you're confident, try and get them a couple of times, because they certainly pay a good price. And for me, though, yeah, that's the main betting strategy for the Melbourne Cup.
Just out of interest, how many horses would you be looking to put in a first four for the punters at home?
Well, for me, obviously you can go the boxed option or you go the standout option. I'm rather be a bit greedy and try and get a bit better percentage, so I'll stand 3 or 4 out and then have 6 or 7 for second and then 8 for third and then go a bit wider for fourth. Just something like that, I think that gives you a great chance to really get a really good amount of money. We saw in Derby Day, there was a couple of there's an $81,000 one. I got one that was 38,000. There's some really good pools there, and I think that's the way you should play it for small money.
Who are the 3 or 4 you think can win, Luke?
Yeah, for me, Mel from a European point of view, he's got to be the pick of them for me. I just worry about a horse like Gold Trip. I know when he gets in front, he switches off. So he's one of those horses that really needs to find a bum and get out late. And the Melbourne Cup's not really like that. Yes, he's a classy horse and whatnot, but I've sort of got Mel for first and Gold Trip for sort of second. And then I'm sort of, scared of these horses like Interpretation and ARAPAHO and EMISSARY for that minor money sort of situation. So more than happy to leave out DUAVILLE Legend and Realm of Flowers from the exotics, and if they miss, there'll be some really juicy pools there.
Brilliant. And your final thoughts, Dean?
Yeah, usually most years I sort of think you can narrow it down to 5 or 6 and usually find the winner. There's really only 2 horses, just at the way the markets are, just because of the way the market's shaped up, that I could actually want to back to win, and that's Without a Fight at around $11 and Lunar Flare at around $19. They just seem really good value when lining up the rest of the field. I think Gold Trip. If he just had sort of 55.5 rather than 57.5, I'd be a lot keener. But I do think I can see 480 at the moment with Top Sort. I think he's a great place bet. I think there's always those really classy horses, and they often seem to run second or third, and just one of the lightweights knocks them off. But 480 is a great place bet for Gold Trip. And I thought Interpretation at sort of I can see $14, $15 even a place. Like Luke said, I think he just hasn't been ridden great, and Craig Newitt with the lightweight. He rode quite well on Derby Day, Craig Newitt. He always gets knocked off by one of the better riders, but he ran a couple of good seconds and thirds, and I have a feeling he could do it on this horse as well. So I'm backing Without a Fight and Lunar Flare to win, and I might even look at Gold Trip and the Interpretation of place, and that's probably the way I'll play it, because I'm gonna bet around DUAVILLE Legend and Realm of Flowers, just like Luke.
All right. Well, that's been pretty comprehensive. Dean and Luke, thanks again for your time, and all the very best with Gold Trip on Tuesday, Luke.
Yeah, I'll leave you with 2 before I go. There's a horse post straight after the Melbourne Cup. If we miss out on the first 4, you can have something on a horse called Nugget. I expect to see him possibly winning a Doncaster or something in the autumn, and as long as the track's not wet, you'll see a really good horse there. And I thought one up in the Big Dance in Sydney, I know the horse has been set for it all along, is a horse called Rustic Steel at about $11 or $12. I think if you're doing no good in Melbourne, you have a look at that horse too. So that's going to be my day anyway.
Brilliant. Thanks, Luke. And final thoughts from you, Dean?
I haven't had a close look at much else just yet. The one horse I was really hoping it would stay dry for is the race before the Melbourne Cup. It was a horse called Regal Lion. It was just super impressive, winning at Sandown over 1700, second up. He ran second in the Tulloch as a 3-year-old and third in the New Zealand Derby. He ran over 2400 in the Herbert Power. They had a crack at the Caulfield Cup. Just didn't have the right setup for that. Back to 1800, I think it suits perfectly. Just as long as it's not too wet. I think he's a really nice bet. He's about $14 at the moment, so he's one I'm really keen to back if the rain doesn't come too hard by that point.
All right, brilliant. Well, thanks again, boys, and good luck to everyone at home. Give me a bet on Tuesday. Cheers.
Thanks, Lewis. Cheers, Luke.
Hope everyone gets it. Well done. Thank you.
At Winning Edge Investments, our team of highly skilled expert analysts and full-time professional punters review the data, crunch the figures, assess the best betting opportunities, and deliver them to your phone via our app and your email inbox in real time so you profit. Go to www.winningedgeinvestments.com, look at our membership options, make your choice, and enter the promo code PODCAST to receive a special 25% discount on your first membership just for listening. That's PODCAST in capital letters for a 25% ongoing discount on your first membership. Treat your betting like a business and invest intelligently with Winning Edge Investments.